Hello, everyone, and welcome back to NetApp On Air. As always, I am your host, Nick Howell. Thank you so much for joining us today for yet another episode of our show here at NetApp. We have a lot to go over today. It's a very exciting topic, one that I'm really interested in hearing more and more about because I don't know that much about what these guys have been up to. So I'm anxious to pick their brains and see what's been going on, and I hope you are as well. But we got to do a little bit of housekeeping first. Follow us on all the socials and subscribe to us right here on YouTube. You guys know how to do all that stuff. It's 2024. We know how to do social media at this point. But the big thing I want you guys to know is we do have a very large Discord community. And if you're not in there yet, we would love to welcome you guys in. There's 5,000 strong in there of various executives, support staff, NetApp enthusiasts, and end users. It's a very technical community, so come and join us. If you have any questions, if you want to just chat up about how you're doing things in your data center or in the cloud or anything in between, come and hang out and let us know. Because that's also where we advertise all of the episodes that we're going to be doing is in Discord for right here on Air. And we have a lot of stuff upcoming for NetApp Insight, which we are less than 1 month away. Drew, I think we're down to 3 weeks at this point, man. September 23rd, Monday through Wednesday at the MGM Grand in Las Vegas. If you haven't registered yet, man, you're going to be missing out. We've got a lot of good stuff. Last year was the first year back after 4 long years being away from you guys throughout the pandemic. This year, we're coming back a lot stronger for year 2 of the return. We got a lot of stuff planned. NetApp On Air is going to be there in full force. The community is going to be there in full force. We're going to be having a warm-up party. Here's some breaking news for you. The first annual warm-up party, community warm-up party, will be happening on Sunday night. So if you haven't registered, or even if you have registered, make sure that you're going to be available on Sunday evening from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. At the MGM Grand. It's at the venue's called Losers Bar, which cool little topics. Little country western bar. Going to have some apps. Going to have some beer and wine. Going to have some good networking, good community gathering. So there it is. The big announcement is the community warm-up party for Sunday evening, the first ever that we're excited to bring to Insight and many insights in the future. So make sure you get there for Sunday evening. You will have to have your badge picked up. It is open on Sunday for badge pickup if you've registered. It is only allowed for registered attendees. So there are a couple of little stipulations. There will be an email going out this week for everyone who has registered. If you have registered, you can find it in the catalog and you'll be able to RSVP to the event. There is limited availability, so make sure you get your RSVP in if you want to come. So very much excited about having that. The other big thing that we're going to be doing at Insight this year is NetApp On Air will have a place. We will be live streaming some breakdowns of the keynote. We're going to be introducing a brand new segment called Snapshot, where we're going to basically do color commentary immediately after the keynotes finish on each day, and we're going to be breaking down everything that was announced, everything that was discussed, all of the strategy discussions, all of the product discussions, all of that. We're going to be joined by some NetApp subject matter experts, partners, analysts, special guests, customers, all kinds of stuff. So make sure you check that out as well. And that's for all of you guys that are watching from home, honestly, that for some reason couldn't make it to the event. We're going to continue the coverage of the show for you beyond the in-person activities that'll be going on. So keep an eye out for that more soon. If you're in Discord already, you can RSVP to those snapshot timeframes to make sure you get reminders so that you can know when those are going live. But they will immediately follow the keynotes on each day. All right. A lot of housekeeping to do. It's going to be a busy month as we lead into Insight. We're looking at doing a special on-air episode on the 18th, so 2 weeks from today, going over all of the details of everything that's going to be happening the following week at Insight. So stay tuned for that one. Let's get into our topic for today. Unless you've been living under a rock for the last, 12, 24 months, AI has ruled the conversation for just about everything over the last couple of years. And really it started, I guess I would say for me, with the release of ChatGPT original back in 2022, whenever that, I think December 2022. And I really dove into that stuff. And what I've been interested in seeing the evolution of, it's evolved even beyond my own expectations, is how enterprises were going to take that. There were some obvious suggestions around code development and things like that, how to better manage marketing messaging and things like that. But what I think has really caught people off guard is the movement around RAG, retrieval augmented generation, where companies can take advantage of data they already have and build models around those sorts of things. And the guests that we have brought on today have done something similar. I'm not going to pretend that I know what they've done. I just want to get them on here so that they can talk about what they've done and how it can help you as end users operate your NetApp stuff more efficiently. First, I want to introduce Mr. Grant Glass. Grant, thank you very much. Grant Glass. That's a tough one to say. Grant Glass. Grant, how you doing, man?
Thank you, Nick. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm excited to be here today. I'm excited to talk to you, both of you, because this is a big deal I think it's a small beginning of a big deal. I know we're using AI in other areas that I can't really talk about right now, I don't think. There are other things going on in other areas, but I'm excited to talk about this one because I think it hits home for every single end user, every one of our customers, our partners, all of that stuff that have ever done anything with our documentation before. So let me bring your partner in crime on here as well. He's our senior director of the GCXS. I'll let him describe what that is in just a second. Mr. Adam Newton. Adam, thank you so much for joining us as well. I appreciate it.
Hey, good to see you. Good to see you.
So what is GCXS for me, real quick?
Global Content Experience Services, which is an umbrella organization that I run comprising our technical publications team, the globalization team that's responsible for translating and localizing content and product, and also a small but mighty team of data scientists that Grant is part of. So we have 3 teams within our organization.
Fantastic. And Grant, what is it you say you do here?
Oh, this is an interesting. I'm going to listen carefully.
Yeah.
You know, I my PhD is in English, and I studied, what we would call computational literary studies. So, how do we use computers to read tens of thousands of books instead of a couple hundred? And, what I do at NetApp is we have such an immense amount of product documentation and, great content that's generated from our support, our technical writers, and our community that, we want to kind of leverage that, right, and understand it better. And, my background in learning about language and linguistics really kind of helps with that. Like I have this kind of dual data science, English background. And so, what I'm doing at NetApp is to help, our customers and our partners kind of navigate the way in which we use language in our products easier, right?
Okay. That's a good way to put it. I like that. It's not something that, as someone who has written several papers at NetApp, whether they be best practices guides or blog posts or my own blogs or anything like that, I'm a mechanical engineer. I certainly never really spent a lot of time caring about how to say things that much until I really got into corporate world. And so it's funny. It'd be interesting to see those two like juxtapositions. But like I'm a more of a problem solver. Like give me something that's broken and I'll figure out a way to fix it. That's the way I go about it. But I like the approach of how using words in different ways can mean different things to people, and that there's a whole science behind that is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to think about. I think a lot of people in the AI space would say something of like, ChatGPT hallucinates, right? And gets information wrong. And what they don't realize is hallucination is kind of like an aspect of the model that it kind of tells you like, oh, it was trained on this kind of use of language, and you're using language in this other way that's almost incompatible. And so that's where like the hallucination comes. It's actually using the words differently than you would use them. And so this is where that kind of language background helps. It's like, because large language models are trained on essentially textual data, right? We want to think about, well, how does that training, manifest in when we're trying to use those models and whatnot?
So what you're referring to could be generally known as prompting, how we interact with any sort of AI, whether it be a chat GPT or a bot or anything like that, how you interface with an AI and prompt it to do certain things. The words you use and the way you use them matters.
Yeah, exactly. Like, at NetApp, we would often use licensing to talk about ONTAP versions. And sometimes other people would say, oh, that's a version of ONTAP, right? Or
Right.
that's a model of ONTAP. So like even these like little semantic differences, right, in which the way that we like to use wording at NetApp often sometimes conflicts with the way that users, from different parts of the country and different parts of the world would use that kind of language. So,
Gotcha.
we keep those things in mind when we're trying to help people navigate our products.
Fantastic. So, Adam, a question for you: how, with the rise of AI, the way that it's come about, how did we get to the point where we were ready to introduce something like Doc, like what we're going to talk about today? And can you tell me a little bit about the kind of strategic preparation of how we got to that point?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me go back a little bit to Grant introduced himself as having a background in English. And when I thought about my opportunity to bring data science into NetApp, there are a lot of other data scientists right throughout the organization. I thought a little bit about what was unique in our own area. And I wanted someone who was really trained in had a language background, who could begin to shift our team's thinking about the work that we do and the value we create. Yes, of course, our team will always write the documentation, and the documentation represents the ground truth about how a product works and how you should use our products. But I was also thinking we were at a moment when, and this really came, just a bit of background, Grant came into the company in February of 2022. I think earlier you said December 2022. So 10 months after Grant came on board, we had a discussion. Hey, this ChatGPT thing, right? And that really got me thinking a little bit about in what way can we leverage the work that we do and apply data science to it to create new value for customers and syndicate content into different services than just docs.netapp.com. Mm-hmm. So I think the opportunity came, Nick, honestly, at the same time that it burst into the public's consciousness for me. But I think we realized that there was more value latent in our content and in what we did that could be delivered out to customers in a new and exciting way.
Yeah, and I look at this through the lens of a creator, of a writer, and I think about how short a shelf life a lot of this documentation can have. And I think about how literally every year part of our job was to iterate and update what's changed, new versions, all of these kinds of things. And I think since we've moved to like the Get Docs platform, like that's become easier and more iterative in that sense, rather than publishing these monolithic hundreds of pages technical reports. As great as they are and were at the time 15 years ago, things have moved on. We need something that's a little more searchable, a little more interactive, a little more things. And I think there's a little bit of that there from both the writer and the end user perspective that's very welcomed. That this brings along with it.
Nick, that's the theme I hear in your words there that resonates with me is openness.
Yeah.
And I think the team chose a number of years ago from being specialist authors working in a closed system with a highly specialized language format of XML to go to an open authoring and publishing and file maintenance architecture. And, this project feels to me like an extension of that mindset change. This is very much a solution that opens pathways for us and opens our own content terrain to us in ways that we can't discover it, through pure manual effort. We are literally seeing gaps now in our content that we couldn't see before. We're opening it up to ourselves.
Great point.
And we're also finding places where perhaps NetApp's narrative is suboptimal in the sense that maybe a writer wrote a piece of documentation at one point in time and another writer was unaware of that and wrote another piece, and they're slightly contradictory or slightly out of sync. So we're seeing a good opportunity for us to unearth some of maybe what you were talking about, technical debt and content.
Yeah, it clears up some blind spots, definitely. So before we
does.
get much further, let's actually define what we did. What have we done here? Because right now we're sort of just we're waxing poetic about the mission, but what was delivered, and really what was the end game, the end result of it?
Maybe I'll take that, Grant. You can.
Sure.
Yeah. So we've delivered a generative AI chatbot that it's a RAG solution, and it uses as its reference set or data set to generate answers, all the content that's on docs.netapp.com. I'll stop there. Grant?
I mean, I think you said it succinctly, right? It's, I think Adam said, exactly what the thing is, and it's meant to really help customers navigate all all of our kind of product documentation, right? And trying to be able to provide answers and links to documentation, to simple natural language queries, right? Rather than trying search and trying keywords, right? You're just going to type out, how do I do this, or what is storage efficiency, and how do I implement it in a NetApp product. So I think it allows for a more conversational tone. And we also realize with this kind of language problem, chatbots are interactive. So you can say to the bot, oh, you didn't get this right, or oh, I like a little more detail here, where it's interactive and turn-based, right? Where it will understand the conversation and what you're telling it and react to it, right? Rather than having you kind of figure out by yourself, what documentation I need to look for and how to do those sorts of things.
Oh, there's a question in the chat I'll ask you directly. Is it available today? Is this something that we're looking forward to? Has this been released and available, and where can people find it?
Yeah, yes, it is. It is available on our docs.netapp.com website. You'll look for a small little icon in the bottom lower right. One thing, we do not yet have it on the docs.netapp.com homepage. Sorry, I have to go into detail. So you'll have to go into a products documentation on tap, storage grid, and so forth.
Gotcha.
Nick, one thing too, we should note, what is that data set? It's 170 or so thousand files in English. Our production pipeline also generates 8 other languages of those 170,000 pages into other languages. So, it's a huge data set. It's also a very interesting data set within NetApp. We might get to that later, because it is a semantically rich, non-determinate, and fast-moving and fast-changing data set. So interestingly, it is not unlike what many customers have, and it's something our own company is very interested in using in a sort of a dog-fooding way.
Yeah, and I think about it to the extent of, can I go ask it to give me a wiring diagram for my FAS 2850 with 4 shelves? And is it going to give me a link to something, or is it going to literally spell out what cables go in what ports?
Well, Grant, you want to take that one?
So, as long as the diagram, exists in the documentation, it's not going to produce for you, like it's not going to generate a new schematic for you, but it will describe, the process for doing it. So usually, you'll see the kind of behavior of these bots. Like when I ask it for, a task, right? It will generally give me steps, of you need to do these steps in this order. So, and then it will link to the accompanying documentation that it used to generate that answer. So, if you want to reference back and, you want all the details of the, installation guide, you can certainly, it will link to that and give you that. One of the really nice things about it too is we've created kind of follow-up questions. So based on what you're telling it and the questions that you're asking, it's going to suggest 3 questions to kind of carry on the conversation or to get you to think about maybe there are other considerations that you didn't think of.
Yeah. And I look at this, I mean, we've all been on that website. There's always that one website, and they want you to chat. And every time you call a 1-800 number and there's like, please use our text chat, please use our website, please. And they're just trying like hell just to get you off the phone and over to the website to use the thing. And you go there and you ask it the question, I need this part for this thing. Here's a link to this other arbitrary thing that I am not here to take. Like, so we've all had that experience with chatbots before on some website somewhere. I guess where I'm going with this is, can I ask it very specific things, very detailed? Hey, does it matter if I plug this cable into 01A or 01B or E0A, E0B? Like, is it going to matter? How deep down in the weeds can this thing talk on tap and hardware?
I think, Nick, it all depends on the underlying documentation.
Okay.
So, one way that the RAG solutions have been particularly compelling to businesses is you're really constraining the large language model, right?
Okay.
You're using its abilities, like, when Adam was first talking about, when we first started to play with ChatGPT, right? It's very good at summary. It's really not good at information retrieval, right?
Right.
So the reason RAG solutions work really well is essentially, you're giving it kind of an open book test. You're saying, hey, I retrieved these 3 documents. I know the answer to Nick's question is in these 3 documents. Find it, and give it back to Nick. And you're constraining it to say, you don't know anything else about the world, right? All you know is a little bit about
these 3
NetApp
pages
and these 3 pages, right?
Yeah.
So this is where, going back to our earlier conversation about, the platform of GitHub and having the docs be open for comments, right? And, we're constantly changing it. So having that kind of ability to constantly adapt and update your underlying documentation really is transformative to these experiences, because we can see through DocBot now, Doc, we can see, what questions people are asking.
Okay.
And, we're identifying, like Adam said, we're identifying sometimes gaps in the documentation to say, oh, hey, we assumed no one really wanted to know this information, or this was, too much explanation. But now we're seeing, direct feedback from customers saying, no, they want to learn more about this feature, or they want to know exactly what port, to plug that into. And so, it allows us to adjust the underlying documentation. And that's what makes, these solutions work really well, is it's this holistic thought of, yes, there's prompting that we do to constrain it. There's documentation and adjustments to the documentation that we do. And then there's adjustments to the retrieval mechanisms. And all of those things work together to provide like really specific answers. And so, that's where the RAG solutions have really kind of transformed the way that we use AI. AI out of the box, we all know works pretty good, but not great. Yeah. And when you constrain it in these ways on specific documents, you really get to let it work. But the flip side to that is to say, if it's not in the documentation, right, it becomes very difficult to answer.
So given the nature of GitHub Docs or Git Docs or Git-based docs, whether it's GitHub or not, they can be iterative almost in real time. Like multiple people can be changing a lot of that stuff. So when someone sends a query or prompts DocBot or Doc to something, is it scanning in real time, or has it assembled a model that it is working off of, and you guys have to kind of continuously update that model? I guess is the question. Which direction is it going?
So, the direction it's going is, we have particular standards and practices that the writers abide to, right? We'll have, a customer say, I think we should add this into the document, right? And the writer will look at that and respond and adjust the document. And so because we have the kind of writers that are structuring and architecting the documents in a particular way, right? We've constructed DocBot, so it's it already recognizes the ways in which our writers construct our documents. And so, even if we make a change to it, you're not having to retrain anything. You're just going to be adjusting it at the document level, right? Rather than pushing up all this code and adjusting all these things, because, these are indeterminate systems. And so, we found this in our development of Doc is, you solve for one thing and then you introduce new problems, right? And so it's a balancing act. So, the easiest way to kind of get around that is to really push it on the documentation and write the documentation in this way that, Adam, we've been talking a lot about this, is you writing the documentation both for human and non-human consumers, right? And I think that's a new direction that a lot of organizations are thinking about is, how do I write in a particular way that, an AI system that is, scraping my content or looking at my website, how is that going to read that content and derive meaning from that?
And I want to add to, and maybe go back to your question too, Nick, as well, maybe supplement what Grant was saying, which was how current is the RAG reference set? And the answer is it's as current as the last build. Okay. So whenever we build the newest update to a file or if a new file is introduced into the system, it is added to the reference set. I think so. I hope that answers your question as well.
It does, and I'll say this just as some commentary. I like that we started with the documentation, and here's why. There can be a lot of opinionated commentary in blogs and forums and other sort of destinations where people can say how to do things, and it may not be entirely accurate, or it may be going around a certain way. I like that we started with documentation because that is our blessed, official, sanitized kind of it's gone through levels of people, of engineering as well as documentation folks, to make it out onto the website. And we can certainly take in the feedback and the questions and the comments and all the suggestions and all of that stuff in the very open kind of way. But if it's on that site, somebody somewhere has blessed that documentation to be there. I think what can happen in these situations, I've seen this happen at a couple of places where companies have pointed it at a blog roll or something out and sort of take that information in as gospel. And then it begins to, the RAG model begins to learn on that, and it may or may not be accurate. So I just wanted to tell you guys that. Thank you so much for starting with docs, because I think that is the best place to really feel this out and see where it could go in the future. Obviously, we want to incorporate, there's 30 years of knowledge in our KB, in our community forums. There's just so much legacy in there. But there's really no way to filter out inaccuracy that I can think of in legacy content like that. I was curious if you've run into anything like that as this was coming up.
Yeah, maybe Grant. I think Nick. The folks watching the show may also be interested in my own mistake, which was when Grant and I were first talking about the ChatGPT explosion. I think you referenced December of 2022. Hopefully I'm not proliferating incorrect information. Let's say December 2022. There was a bit of magical thinking on my part. Let's throw those 170,000 files from docs.netapp.com to this beast, and it will magically make sense of it all and create perfect answers. And where we are right now, Doc is a beta. It may be a beta for a long time. Wasn't Gmail a beta for 8 years? I don't know, but We did constrain it. So the current RAG reference set that is using is docs.netapp.com, a subset of that content. And for example, we publish content for some of our older Snap products, SDU or Snapdrive for Unix, right? Some of the content from those documents is old enough that it can corrupt and well, corrupt is a strong, can lower the accuracy of docs answers when it comes to Snap related technology.
Yeah.
So I think your watchers and viewers may be interested to know that we are in fact constraining it to a subset of our own content. And one of the interesting development challenges and ongoing improvement challenges is when we add yet another another doc site for another product, to what extent does it improve or lessen the accuracy of docs answers? So when we introduce the next product, what is going to happen to the question that we previously said it answered very well?
Yeah, it's a good. Is it a sliding scale? Is it require constant tuning, or is there a sweet spot that it eventually gets to where it ingests net new content and just handles it?
I'm going to let that one.
Yeah, I think it's sometimes we need to hold its hand a little.
Okay.
You know, but it's
same with ChatGPT.
It's figuring out like how it thinks about language and products. Like for instance, you know, oftentimes for logs we refer to viewing them in different ways. Sometimes we say accessing logs. Sometimes we say displaying logs. Right. And those are specific words. And, you know, what we found in some of our experimentation with ChatGPT is ChatGPT seems to say view is close to both display and access. So, you know, if we have a user that's looking at, oh, I want to view logs or display logs, at the background, we're saying, oh, you know, it's view, and you're going to see two different products, you know, ONTAP and BlueXP, because they use different terms when they're talking about logs. And so it's a process in which we learn, like Adam said, we learn about the documents. We learn about particular words that we think most people understand, but then the you know, ChatGPT shows us that, hey, maybe someone can get confused with these different terminologies. And so, you know, we do this adjustment in both the documentation and the prompting and the retrieval of DocBot in order to adjust for that. So we try to get to this happy medium where, you know, if someone is specific, they're going to retrieve the right, you know, if it's accessing logs, then ONTAP, you're going to get ONTAP accessing logs. But if you're general in your use, you're going to get, you know, a number of different products, you know, ways to get their logs, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and as a former admin, I'll say the right phrase is to pull the logs.
Yeah, there you go. Well, actually, if I can,
you never access the logs. You either capture the logs or you pull the logs. So, hi, Doc. We're going to confuse the hell out of you.
Well, but you know, hey, Nick, but maybe in that role, you might be talking to a junior employee who's just joined your company from another domain, or, you know, a recent college grad, or just someone who's new to the job, right? Yeah. And you have to speak to them in a certain way that you would not speak to a senior colleague, right? That would understand, you know, the jargon and vernacular of a shared job function, right? Or a shared experience.
There's a lot of slang in there.
Yeah. So I think another thing that that folks may want to think about is, to what extent is this interface to information ready to engage you at the level at which you are? You know, is it a junior employee who's trying to help you? If so, you really need to give it some grace and be curious about why it answers in the way it does, and maybe even ask it, you know, how confident are you in that answer, right? Have you thought of any other angles? Could you rephrase what you said, which is much more conversational and open-ended?
Yeah. Got some great questions going on in here. I want to throw a couple of them up real quick, and one of them is going to segue us into where I want to send us next. A team member, John Woodall. Hey, John. Said it'd be great to have a diagram to validate and create as-built documentation. Pretty please. I'm not exactly sure what he means by that, but Grant, how do you take that on?
I think I think he's probably referring to different data sources like a subdata,
Oh, yeah.
and and this is one of those things that we look at these. We know that there are many other data sources that we could ingest into Doc, KBs and a subdata and more comprehensive hardware data, and it's being able to hear these queries from the users. Like we launched Doc, about 2 weeks ago, and we're seeing a lot of users really want more hardware, and what we're looking at is, well, how do we use the kind of arena that we've made for Doc in terms of document construction, and how do we take data from hardware universe and put it into Docs, right? And put it in a way that Doc is going to understand and answer the questions correctly. And so these are things that we're definitely looking at. They like some other users are kind of talking about, like, how do you balance this between, getting new data in and changing your underlying data, and then, testing. And so, we've thought a lot about testing in terms of, we have this, 150 questions that we know Doc answers correctly. And, anytime we make a change, right, we're looking back on to say, do we have fidelity to where we used to be? And, do we have fidelity to that? And then are we grabbing these new questions that the users are looking for? And, that's
how's that
the
measured,
way that
Grant? Is that a percentage of accuracy, or how are you measuring that, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so there are a lot of really good RAG evaluation libraries. One is called Ragus, and a lot of times you're going to want to kind of customize. A lot of the times it's basically, under the hood, it's you're inviting another model with a particular kind of prompting. Be like, you're a teacher, you're grading a test, right? Here's the right and wrong answer. How close is this answer from Doc to the right answer? Yes or no question. And then you're looking at a percentage, on that 150, does it get, 90% at least? Yes. So, there's a number of really well-established, frameworks for evaluating RAG systems, but it requires, a lot of the times, you to have a nice dedicated data set of, we know these are the right answers to these questions. And so, we're getting a lot more robust data sets, because now that, Doc is out in the wild, anytime you give it a nice little thumbs up, we're saying, okay, a user liked this answer. We're going to use these answers now when we're testing Doc, when we ingest more data or new data sources, right? We want to make sure we continue to make those people happy with answering new types of questions.
Yeah.
Does that, Nick, did that kind of?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a level of different people, different end users and customers are going to be on different parts of their journey. They're going to be at different stages of their journey. So you may have a very junior, brand new, never heard the name NetApp before, getting their first system. And they're going to want to know about how do snapshots work, what the hell is a flex clone, what are all these flex and snap words, right? But I think then you're going to have a very, the experienced 20-year graybeard that's been doing storage systems for, the better part of his career, that's going to understand that and want to know some more intricate details about maybe how do I trigger certain things, or how do I interact with the ONTAP API. There's going to be some more advanced stuff. So I think there needs to be, if there's not already, some level of understanding of where a prompt or a user submitting a question is along in their journey based on the question that they're asking. Is there some evaluation of that? Like if somebody just goes, what is a snapshot? Like that's pretty easy to spit a definition out on. But if someone asks, how do I do something? How do I use the ONTAP API to trigger a snapshot? I feel like those are two different extremes of the same question. Does that make sense? Am I getting? Is that coming across? Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're I mean, Adam can chime in, but I think, that's one of the most beautiful things I think about our writing team is if you look at the docs, they're able to kind of, in some of these more conceptual documents to kind of get those, junior or new users and answer those kind of basic questions. But then we also have task related documents, right? Like, how do I do something? And, one of the things that you want to think about when you're creating these kind of systems is, metadata. So if there's metadata in a document that says, this is a concept document, this is a reference document, this is a task document, right? We can use that metadata to kind of, get that kind of user. Like, oh, we know this is a long question. So the likelihood, right, it has lots of details in it. So the likelihood of it being a reference or a task set of documentation is high, right? And we would do something.
It's context at the end of the day. You're giving the AI context.
Yeah. And this is where, metadata and the underlying documentation really helps, right? When you have those sorts of things coded into the documents, then you can use that in your retrieval to say, like, ooh, this looks like a very complex question. We probably need, the task and reference documents for this. So
yeah. I want to pause on. Thank you, John, for the question. I see you got a follow up there as well. I'll get back to it in just a second. I want to bring up this diagram that you are sharing with us, Adam, of the flow of things, and that way we can sort of go over, like, this is not something that's trivial. This is not something small. There's a lot going on here. So can you guys walk me through sort of what the flow is here? I mean, traditionally we're used to going to docs.netapp.com and searching and maybe word finding something that we might be looking for, and kind of fingers crossed, hope for the best that we find some kind of how-to or some kind of solution to the problem. I'll throw the KB in there as well as another alternative. But how do we go from that to what we're looking at on the screen here?
Grant, do you want to speak to this slide? Maybe I'll provide an overview and you can speak to the specifics for the context of this conversation. Sure. About the right side. The slide can really be looked at as two halves. The left side of this slide is a picture describing our content factory, basically how we gather information, how we structure the information and publish it out to docs.netapp.com. Very high level on the left side, and then on the right side is what we're here talking about, is the generative AI and how it interacts with our content pipeline.
Gotcha.
So Grant, did you want to speak about the right side?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so we kind of have a 10-step process here of, when you're asking the question in the UI. So what we're doing is, we have a VM that runs an orchestrator app, and, we're looking at, giving your question, plus any kind of chat history, or contextual data, plus, prompting that we've made to constrain the answers and, to have it think about, NetApp products. And what we do is we send that to OpenAI, and OpenAI will give us keywords. And OpenAI is very good at figuring out keywords. And, when we think about keywords, it's not just single word phrases. In NetApp land, a lot of times 2-word phrases are extremely important, right? Like the product and the task. And so, we've also prompted OpenAI to kind of give us those sorts of keywords. So, okay, we get these kind of keywords that we're going to search the documents. And so we go to Azure Cognitive Search and we return our top documents. And then we use a re-ranker in Azure Cognitive Search that uses more of kind of, a semantic embedding kind of, exact string matching. And then, we send those documents back to OpenAI with, a prompt and some telemetry, and we get the answer, and we marry that with the citations that we pulled from Azure Cognitive Search, and we return that back to you. And then, there's the other process of, we will get feedback and analytics from the chat, and, we will use that to, improve doc processes. And also, as you can see, it goes back to our content, right?
Yeah.
And we get feedback for, either adjusting content or recreating new content. So
in general, is this a pretty boilerplate RAG solution for documentation chatbots, or is there anything special that we're doing here that makes it unique?
The special portion is, a lot of RAG solutions you'll see will, instead of using like a search service, it'll store an embedding of all your documents, and it will embed your query and then compare, what is the, we would call it Cosign Similarity between,
right,
my underlying documents that I've embedded and the query. And one of the things that we found is because, a lot of our products in storage use a lot of the same words, that exact matching doesn't really work for NetApp, right? Because a lot of the same tasks around storage and volumes and those sorts of words occur across, different kinds of documents. And so the big difference between our solution and something, you would see as a boilerplate RAG solution is this kind of keyword searching and using OpenAI to generate keywords, and then to re-rank our documents in more of that kind of semantic way.
Interesting. Yeah, it makes sense. I really like that. I like that we're almost doing 2 passes, or maybe even 3 the more I'm thinking about it, because first you're parsing the actual input.
Yep.
And then you're sending it through OpenAI to do keyword generation, and then you're sending it through to re-rank it, and even then you're sending it back through for a top 3. Yeah. And I'm looking at that going, wow, okay, so there's a lot of filtering there. There's a lot of like checking to make sure that this is actually what the user asked for.
Yeah.
I realize now, looking at this diagram, we probably didn't represent this well. Or let me rephrase that: we did not represent it at all. That we are not going, directly to public OpenAI. We are doing that by going through our own company's IT environment, which has a secure connection to OpenAI. So I think that's an important piece.
Absolutely.
To acknowledge.
Yeah. I mean, we use it through Azure, and Azure offers a nice little content filter on OpenAI, which helps you make sure that you're even if you don't prompt it well enough, your OpenAI instance isn't going to return any inappropriate responses.
Right. And you don't risk IP,
Yep.
by putting it out into a public chatbot.
Yes, it's not OpenAI is not using what we're doing to train a new model, right?
And interestingly enough, we've mentioned it a few times with I'm going to pull this back down for just a second. Guys,
actually,
if you'd like
Nick,
this,
Nick, can I interrupt you for a second, because I'm going to pick up on something. The title. I want to come back to the title of the slide. Okay. Note that this doesn't say the documentation flow. It says the data flow.
Okay.
So just want to hold that thought. Maybe we can come back to that.
No, go ahead. If data flow.
Oh, okay. Yeah. This is a bit of a, all projects, I think, in my experience, lead to new discoveries, right? So, and you start off on the path and you say, we're going to do this thing. And then a whole bunch of actions and coincidences and missteps and miscommunications and epiphanies happen over the course of the project. And for me, and I've shared this, and Grant's probably tired of hearing me say this, but for me, the big epiphany of this was that my team, the pubs team at NetApp, is, yes, in the business of writing docs, but they're really owners of an enormous data set. And the mindset change is very important. And I think, it is possible that many people in the team are feeling as if generative AI is a threat. And I would point out, actually, that this is suddenly a very interesting opportunity to think of our value to the company and to our customers as data owners. And maybe going back to John's question, owners of data that can be joined to other data that currently exist in silos and can only be experienced through tools, interfaces, or websites that we have the opportunity to join. So if we think about our content as data, now all of a sudden we can use systems, processes, people, we can leverage metadata, we can create new pipelines to create new customer experiences that join data from multiple systems.
Yep.
So I just wanted to make sure I paid attention to that particular word.
I definitely hear the echoes of feeling threatened and stuff like that, especially in the software developer community, in the content creation community. I hear that a little bit, especially for things like faceless videos or, just random voice to text over the top of a stock footage video or something like that. What we used to call this was DBAs. This is exactly what DBAs used to do. They would do mass reporting. They would do a bunch of SQL commands to do joins across databases or across tables in a very prescriptive kind of way in order to generate an output. Right? DBAs, I'm apologizing if I'm being too flimsy with my description there. But that is what we knew 20 years ago as a stock and barrel DBA. That was mostly Crystal reports and Oracle databases and those good old days, right? Yeah. So I look at this through the same lens. I'm looking at it as if there is an output that needs to be generated and it needs to be tailored first. So there is a statement. We're just using XML or GPT prompting instead of, SQL joins. But we're doing a lot of the similar work here that we would see that sort of, business intelligence type of DBA or extension of a database team do in the past.
I think that's a very good observation, Nick. I think that's very good. And I guess on the DBA front, I guess we are doing business as differently.
Well,
I know that wasn't the DBA you were talking about.
Different kind of DBA, but yes, doing business as prompt engineers, basically.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, Nick, I think you kind of thought of something, which is there's a lot of organizations that are looking at large language models to leverage for we would call text to SQL. So can I have a natural language, like, how many clusters do I have installed, on tab 9.14.1, and be able to query, multiple tables and databases and get those answers. And what a lot of people in that space have found is, because my essentially, columns and rows are one word and very specific, it becomes very difficult for these systems to work, where translating some stuff like in a table into more of a natural document, right, where you have this in between form, and that gives it more context. So then these large language models can work a little better with that sort of data. It's transforming a lot of the ways in which many organizations are thinking about their databases, right? Like, how do you create an in-between form that's going to be more appropriate for, AI and large language model use.
And sometimes you just want the answer. You don't want to read a monolithic document, even if it's generated from a prompt. A lot of people use search as I know how to do this stuff. I just forgot this one particular detail. Just give me the facts. Just give me the one quick answer that I need. I guess that's something that I feel like even ChatGPT doesn't do that well. It wants to give me this dissertation on the one sentence that I gave it. And I look at the potential of RAG running a little bit wild in that sense as well, as companies begin to load more and more and larger data sets into the back end of it. How do we keep it tame so that it's actually usable and it's not like self-authoring papers as responses to questions?
Yeah, I think Nick, there's two technical ways to do that. You constrain the output tokens, so how long of a response it can create, and you do this thing in most large language models called frequency penalty, where you can't repeat certain words. The other way that you can go about this is, we would call this few shot or many shot, where you say, here's the way in which I want you to answer questions, right? And so, I want you, if someone says how, I want you to give me steps. Yeah. Or if someone asks, what is something, you're going to give us, 2 to 3 sentences, nothing more. And so there's ways in which, there's multiple kind of ways in which you can program the large language model to be, constrained from both its output perspective, but also giving it like a little more kind of like a, handhold to be like, I want you to kind of look at this and answer in these sorts of ways. And this is where you can get it to have the voice of kind of NetApp or the voice of another company.
Yes, but I also want it to be Starship Troopers. I want it to give me a direct answer to my question and then ask me, would you like to know more? And I can go, no, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't need it to write a thesis for me with bullet points.
Yeah.
If I asked it, can I upgrade ONTAP without non-disruptively? The answer should be yes. Would you like to know more?
Yeah, this is also, hey, we're all new at this, right? So we should share information. A thing that works for me, I just share, that I told you before, I was the victim of magical thinking. I've gone from being, a knuckle scraping cretin to, I'm just crawling out of the ooze, a pile of ooze here and getting onto my hind legs.
You're looking at the lightning coming out of your hands going, yes,
yeah, but you can say
power.
But to your point, Nick, the way you ask the question makes a difference, right? So you could say, in 50 words or less, tell me, ask the question that you asked, right? So there are ways that you learn as a person, a user of the system, to get better results.
Yeah. All right, before we get out of here real quick, just want to throw some quick questions up here. Numeric Citizen, trying it now. This is so cool and useful. There you go, guys. I got some kudos for you. Thank you, Numeric, for joining us today. Kevin asked, so you give it new source material and the RAG pulls from the new source to provide to the AI model. Grant, you were talking about that a little bit. Is that an accurate way to describe that?
Yeah. In this aspect, in the diagram we saw, it would be Azure Cognitive Search holds that document now.
Gotcha. Very cool. All right.
So it's plugged into our build process, right? Our build process.
Yeah. Suba asked a big question. He's, how frequently are builds preferred in LLM RAG world? What are the techniques, methods to evaluate my current model is away from current data?
Yeah, so I think we talked a little bit about this. It's, you want to be very careful when you're changing, from our standpoint, when we're adding a new product in. Yep. Right. And you want to have a data set where you're like, okay, do I have fidelity to my current data plus I'm able to answer new questions? So this is where, having a robust set of underlying, evaluation data or right and wrong answers, right? That really helps.
Yeah, but I guess that's that. Yeah. Okay. I was trying to rethink through the question. I think what Suba's asking here is, how often should you train? Like, what's the trigger point to train or update whatever your next build might be? Is there is it the generation of a new document? Is it the adoption of a new model number? We had the new model numbers come out earlier this year in May, the A70, A90, A1K, like at some point those. So is it really dependent on when the documentation appears and goes live that it will then ingest that and make it part of doc?
Yeah, I mean, I think, major releases are something we test. We have a kind of, test version, right, that we look at documentation before we publish it and test, how it performs there. But, I think, thinking about new models, you always want to do evaluation. So we're always looking at, does it answer our test set of questions correctly? Does this affect the way retrieval? Because retrieval is huge in these systems. So, one easy way you can do that without, doing a lot of work with the LLM is just to research, like, do, snapshot, on tap and see, are there new documents that are going to be retrieved because, someone titled something a particular way. So this is, it's really, really tough because these are indeterminate systems. And, depending on your data set, you got to adjust the temperature and its kind of creativity. And so you don't want to be constantly messing around with everything because you're going to get it to be wildly inconsistent. So, I would say, unless there's a major change, you're not going to go back and configure your parameters for your large language model.
Yeah. Good point. Last but here, Kevin had a couple of good comments, some kudos for you guys. I love the multiple levels of mature thinking around this, the search, the feedback integration, etc. And then just another follow-up there, fascinating work. Thanks for sharing some of the behind. And I'll echo that. Like, thank you guys for coming on and being transparent about like some of the behind the scenes of how this stuff comes together. I know it's not trivial. I know it took, at this point, years of effort to get something like this off the ground. I'll be the first one to say I'm looking forward to doing it with the knowledge base. I think there's arguably even more knowledge in there than there is in the documentation. And when we begin to introduce like some of that stuff, it brings a different context of support, not just stereo instructions, but it brings in the support context. And I think that's going to be an important distinction because it's like what you were saying earlier around how you ask it. Is it a what question or is it a how question? Like, I've run it. For some reason, my system won't boot up. Help. The documentation isn't going to help too much, but there might be a KB article that, hey, if you run into this thing in this condition. So I'm anxious to see that sort of get folded in. I know you guys can't discuss futures and roadmap.
Well, I think we can share just directionally. One thing we do think is very interesting is how might we take this experience into product. I think that is a direction that we think could bear significant value for customers. Especially if we take this experience and join it to things like ASUP data, and just the fact that we know where a customer is in the user interface. So I think that's a very, very interesting and fertile horizon for us.
Some of that work, from what I understand, is being done already internally.
Yes.
So it's something that we might be able to at some point.
Yes, this is very much a shared interest at the platform level at NetApp.
Yep. Definitely. Well, guys, thank you so much to all of you in the chat. Thank you for such a lively chat today. Lots of great questions and comments.
Yeah, thank you.
Grant, Adam, really appreciate you guys taking the time, coming on to see us and hanging out. As we do more updates, please let me know in the future. We'll have you guys back on so that we can get updates out to everybody.
Thank you for having us, Nick.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, a couple things for me to close things out here. I know we're a couple minutes over. We got to get out of here. But just another reminder, Insight, less than 3 weeks away, September 23rd. We got to get there. Keep up with all things. Come join us in Discord. We're going to be announcing all the stuff. We just literally yesterday put up our Insight chat channel. You can do live chat with us leading up to, during, and beyond the event if you have any questions. For those of you in attendance, make sure you're planning to come find me and Drew so you can get your special Insight 2024 attendee role in Discord. So you're gonna want that so you can have it as your little digital badge there. And then one of the ways to do that is you'll be able to come to the Sunday night community warm-up party, but you got to be registered, you got to bring your badge, and you got to RSVP to the event. Just go into the session catalog and search for warm-up, all one word. You'll find it. Hint, hint, wink, wink. More on that coming soon, later this week and next week as we get closer to the event. Again, join Discord, come for the warm-up party, that's the news for right now. The schedule builder is out and live, so if you're registered, you can go ahead and start building your whole 3 days, however you want to do that. And last but certainly not least, just to let you know, for those of you that can't make it for whatever reason this year, I know the date changed and there was a lot of moving parts going on, and some of you just couldn't make it. Fret not. The live stream of the keynotes will be out there, and we'll have the live stream of NetApp on Air, the brand new segment that we're introducing as an extension of NetApp on Air this year. We're calling it Snapshot, and that's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be your boy Nick here at an anchor desk, interviewing some really important personalities that are joining us in Vegas for Insight. Plus, we'll have some NetApp SMEs on. We'll have the A-Team members will be in attendance. We'll have all kinds of good folks that you guys want to attend with us. So thanks for joining us today. Really appreciate it. We'll be back next week with some more content, and on the 18th with our Insight Get Ready warm-up special. But until next time, take care.